We're still here at SR Automotive. Now we've heard they've got some really cool cars next door, so let's go take a look.
Okay, here we have it, the real deal, the Group B Metro. If ever there's been a more resounding sounding car I've ever heard, this is it. V6, naturally aspirated, Goodman 2.7 litre. Originally they were a bigger engine, but they had to be de-stroked to be allowed to run in the National Championship in the UK. The shift light on this car is at 13,500 RPM, and it's something else to drive. Bit of history. It actually is the original Rothmans car that Jimmy McRae and Ian Grinrod had as their, like a demo car. They used to take people for runs, etc. in it. It was then purchased by Lloyd's of London, who then had it transformed into a full international spec tarmac car. It's done majority of tarmac events all of its life. One of the more famous peddlers from the UK was Chris Dillo, and Chris has helped us quite a lot in putting this car back together and sourcing parts for us. Obviously, not many places in Australia where we can go and get bits for this, so it all comes out of Europe. Basically the car was extensively rebuilt, and we ran it for Mr. Thompson at the World Time Attack about 2 years ago, and unfortunately it had an oil leak and the back of the car caught fire, so we're in the process of rebuilding it again. This actual light pod here was the one, I'm sure everyone's watched the YouTube clips of Colin McRae driving one of these. This is the actual light pod off of the car that Colin drove. Alistair so kindly put us in contact with some of the guys in Scotland, and the guy that actually owned the car that Colin drove still had the light pod, and we managed to do a bit of a deal and get the light pod to fit this car, so a bit of history there in itself. Obviously with this car you can't really compare the two cars. Anything that was made in this era, I don't think they were really designed to still be around now. The workmanship on them was quite rough. Where they integrated the roll cage back then, it's actually part of the pillar. So the car was designed as like a frame, and they welded the panels on top of it. The wheelbase on this car is so short. Again, a different type of twitchiness to the Audi. You'd have to be a Colin McRae type of person to drive it really fast. We couldn't find a rear tailgate in Australia, so we actually had this one manufactured and molded. So, and this is the original stick that came with the car to hold the rear tailgate up, which I thought was quite unique. Obviously, we have our dry sump tank. We've had to remanufacture all the carbon fibre inner guards, remanufactured the cam covers. Again, can't thank people like Chris Dillos enough for helping us supply and source the parts to keep it as original as possible. The car actually is a runner, and it's due to be put on an engine dyno within the next couple of weeks, and then we'll steam ahead and finish it off and hopefully have it ready for the customer to drive the car at the Classic Adelaide event in December this year. Basically this engine, from what I believe, came out of a Formula One car. Goodman designed the engines for the early model Formula Ones, and it ran then as a V8, and basically they just chopped off 2 cylinders, and here we have the Goodman V6. Very powerful car. There was different types of injection. This one is the top of the range horsepower one. It's got a slide injection, and apparently that made a fair bit of difference to throttle response, and obviously in the general performance of the car. Obviously back then too, they were really big on all of their instruments. So that's the original instrument cluster and instrument dash that was actually run on this car. Hence the reason it's the international spec. With the tacho, your low oil warning light, obviously the flick on, press the button to start. Majority of all the fuses, all the other stuff, that was all left to the navigator. So that was the navigator's job. When you actually sit in the car, you don't sit in the car and look forward. The seat and everything's all off to the side. So you're actually sitting slightly inwards, so your feet are square with the pedal. Quite a weird sitting position and very, very narrow. Hence the reason most of the people that drove these were little jockeys. Apart from Colin, obviously, very tall, but again, very slim. And of course, there's one important thing missing here, which is the wing, which we're just having to strengthen. And although it sounds silly, when we actually drove it at the World Time Attack a couple of years ago, I couldn't believe the faster you went, the more stable it was. So the wing, you can actually feel the back of the car being squatting. So it looks like a wild aero package, but obviously it does work. And you probably watch some of the old Group V videos when they're on the gravel. You can see the plumes of dust just follow the trail all the way along. Quite spectacular to watch. We'll just show you what's under the bonnet here. Obviously we've got no engine. When we first got this vehicle, it was quite badly damaged under the front, and we really couldn't find any specifications of how to actually put it back to the way it originally was. So we actually had the WRC book, which they only printed 500 of. We're very lucky to get an edition of that. And through that we took pictures and scanned them and managed to reproduce the front end exactly how it was. We suspected the car probably had a couple of rather large accidents, and the majority of all this was quite a mess. As you can see here, it's got the Hewland diff, which goes a massive tail shaft straight up to the gearbox, which is also Hewland. They came with a number of different ratios. The gearbox ratios in this car, first, second, third and fourth, are really close together, and when you select fifth, you think you've actually selected the wrong gear. It's that tall. So the top speed on it would be quite remarkable.
I'm assuming that's for the 1980s, get the crowd out of the way.
Yeah. When they actually produced the car, you can see the pedal box here is obviously for the right-hand drive car, and if the car was built for a left-hand drive person, that plate there was just taken off. The whole master cylinder assemblies were swapped over. The steering wheel, all the fittings and everything's all up underneath the dash. You would just swap it all over, swap the dash, and there you have a Henry Toivonen car. Well, as you can see with these cars, if you look at some of the sponsorship this car has, a lot of things that come to us here at SR Automotive is the Shell oils. We still use Shell oils in all of our race cars and all of our customers' road cars and fast, high-speed road cars, twin turbocharged things. Shell oils has come a long way. Obviously the Helix range is now the premium brand. But good to see that Shell have been involved in motorsport, and they still are all around the world. Other sponsors here, obviously Rothmans, which were massive back in the early 80s. Of course now we're all, none of us smoke because it's not good for you, so they're all a blast from the past.